Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact. I'm your host, Orion. Thank you so much for tuning in. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can see me, welcome back to a place you might recognize, you might not. If you're tuning in, depending on when you're tuning in, when you tuned in on the journey, we're back in Chiang Mai, y'all, and it is insane. So there are a couple things I want to talk to you about today. The first one is, I know it's been it's been a minute, you could say. I was on an adventure with Mom. My Dukes came out to visit me, and we traveled all around Malaysia and Borneo. It was a blast. Talk about that a little bit. I want to get into giving up on dream number 2. That sounds fun. Why? And then some recent newly developed ideas and dreams, directions, things that have been on my mind. I've been brainstorming, feeling super inspired about. So we got a lot to talk about today. I'm going to give you kind of a brief breakdown on how things went with Mom, because we just had a lot of fun, and as always, it's a blast, and I would feel honored to have a mom who's down to come out and hang with her boy from all the way across the world. But I also have some really crazy gems, and so I wrote some things down, not necessarily about the trip, but just kind of things I've been learning about in general that I want to share with you. And I want to switch up the style a little bit. So this podcast will be the same. It's going to be crazy Kia ramblings. Some people have reached out and like, Kia, is it kind of like what are you doing with the podcast? And it's pretty much these episodes right here, you and me, are like a diary for life. That's pretty much what it is I want to break down, I'm on this adventure, the human experience, and so I like to break it down into these chapters week by week, or whenever I get around to doing these pods. So they're as much for you as they are for me, and I'm really upfront about that to certain folks that these are very self-indulgent. I don't come in with like a bunch of scripted points, like these are the top takeaways you got to get from the pod. These are a way for me to document the journey, to look back on old frameworks, old mindsets, points in my life where I've been at, what I've been up to, and to kind of see the growth, because I think it's difficult to see growth unless you're looking back, and unless you have a real, almost like time capsules is kind of how I imagine them. Same with I thought with my albums, the music the same way. It's like, yes, it was like super crazy hardcore rap, and then it was more kind of Drakey, and then it was R&B, and then it was up-tempo dance. It was like, these are time capsules. This is where I was. I can listen to the song, takes me back to where I was. So you can tune if you want, or not. If you want top takeaways, I have all the YouTube videos for that. This is more about ideas, frameworks, things of that nature. So you've been warned. Jumping into it, we're going to start off with my last few weeks in Malaysia. It was Malaysia, just as a recap, it was 2 months. I was kind of in like the projects of Malaysia in a way, but it was beautiful. It was like it felt very local. It was like these big housing projects, and I just got to kick it with a bunch of like teenage boys that lived in the neighborhood, and then it was like old Asian moms. It was just cool. I didn't leave or go out that much, but I felt like I was really productive. At the time, I pretty much put together my first collection of short stories, which is what I was really focused on. It's like, I want to write. I knew that I really love writing, and that's something I wanted to talk about in a little bit, but I needed the space. I was like, I need the space just to write, work on these things, learn how to write. And that's a big takeaway. Something we'll get to a little bit later is this idea of learning in concentric circles, meaning like you learn just in time rather than just in case. So you don't need to learn it all up front. So pretty much I was taking that time to learn writing. Got a bunch of short stories. I hired a couple writing coaches, and I sent them the writing to work on the sample for an MFA application. If you don't know what an MFA is, it's a Master's of Fine Arts. In the US, we have these really well-funded, we have funded writing programs from a bunch of different universities. And so that's kind of what I had my target set on. Was last year, around this time, maybe a little earlier, I was kind of breaking down my identity, letting go of the dream of being a musician that I had for so long, kind of trying to reconstruct myself from scratch and figure out what the next direction was. And along those lines, I ended up starting this YouTube channel, and really loved the writing and the scripting of the videos and recording these voiceovers. They were kind of like evolutionary psychology videos, but they would have like almost like poetic intros and outros, or they would have a little bit more narrative focused intros and outros that I would do with voiceover, and I'd record it and not in terms of video. I record the voice separately with like my nice audio gear and like find music, and it was almost like a little mini movie that I thought would be cool to start out the YouTube videos. And I found that I really loved doing those more than just the looking back on this, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it was the whole process of it. But I thought it was really just the writing, and I do love the writing, but that has been I've kind of had my eyes set on an MFA for the last year and change. So I saw what it took to get into these programs. They're highly selective. They're 2 or 3 years, fully funded, meaning that they pretty much pay you 20 to 30 grand per year to study writing, and they cover the tuition, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of what I've been gunning for the last year and change. I've been going through these different experiences. I've been working on kind of this one shorter story. It's not a short story, but it's like it's not a novel exactly, about these kind of 3 experiences, having, drinking ayahuasca in Brazil, trying to do this vision quest in Colombia, and then the Buddhist meditation retreat in India. I'm calling it Eat, Pray, Thug. So that's kind of a piece. And then this collection of short stories, learning how to be a better writer. That's what Malaysia was for. That's my whole point of talking about that. So I didn't go out and explore much, which was nice to have Mom there for, as I find I travel more. I do more of that when I have a travel buddy. And so that's why it's nice to have a girlfriend or mom or a friend who's down to do that, but I didn't really have friends or community there. So when Mom came, we did all the Malaysia things. We saw Kuala Lumpur. We ate a bunch of good food in Georgetown. There are some fun stories in there of just, I won't dive into it too much in this podcast. I should do just a trip recap on that, but it's always fun traveling with family, and that, the way that they can kind of push your buttons in certain ways, that I think it's a testament to the work that my mom has been doing, that I know I can get on her nerves a little bit. And then with me too, I told her one of my biggest things is trying to not make people more like me. That's not necessarily better. And so it's not like trying to give people advice, or you need to do this, you need to do that, even though my YouTube channel is kind of about an advice channel, but it's more like, these are gems I found for life, take them if you want. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I think oftentimes we're so focused on trying to get other people to be more like us. We have, whether it's the way we eat or our workout or what we do or what we believe, if it's religion or politics, it's no, you need to believe what I believe. For some reason, that's kind of our inherent nature. So with my meditation and my self-work, I've been really trying to focus on how to let people be themselves, and that I don't know best. I just know what works for me, and I'll just do me, you do you, and that's cool. Rather than when I took Mom into Thailand, it was I kept making her try to get these Thai massages, because I really love getting massages. She's like, yeah, it's not my thing. I was like, no, Mom, we weren't the right one. We got to go to the right shop. Rather than just letting her be her. And so that was my key focus going into this, was my mom really loves, so for example, my mom, I told you I wasn't going to tell stories, but fuck it, it's my podcast, so I'm telling stories. My mom loves birding, right? I couldn't give a shit about birds, but because Mom likes birding, I try to support that. And so she has this app on her phone, and you can hold the app up, and it records. And when there are birds chirping, it'll tell you what the bird is. So since she really loves it, anytime we're out on a hike or something, she'll have her phone out and the app open and recording birds. Because of this, when that's happening, she's not talking because it's about audio, and I can't talk because it's recording as audio for the birds. So I don't want to fuck it up. And it was interesting to see how much I have these ideas around technology and getting in the way of things. If I'm out hiking, we've been on 3 hikes, which is the most we've ever done hiking wise, which I think is a testament to Mom and her being so gung-ho on these adventures. But it really, when I think about wanting to hike, I get so heady that I want people to be in the moment. If I'm hiking, I don't want there to be tech around. I want to be one with nature, blah, blah, blah. And so this is one of those times when it was to me, being present means no tech. That's why I really try to limit my time on social media, and I try to, I meditate, and I try to be present and intentional and all the Tim Ferriss-y things. White boy, hippie, new age, spiritual things. And it was interesting to talk to Mom about that. So, we'd be hiking and I'd be talking and she'd be like, shh, she has the app out, and I'd be like, okay. And my mom would be like, Kia, shut the fuck up. Let Mom do her thing. Mom enjoys this. And it was interesting talking to her later about it, because to her, that makes her more present when she has the app in her phone out and she's walking around and hiking. It makes her feel like she's more in the moment. Where to me, because as my idea around tech, like I immediately assume if phones are out, and it irks me in this weird way, that I was like, Kia, take a deep breath. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Same sort of thing, small things like this happened in the last night. So Mom kept wanting to do like a trip recap, like where did we go, what did we eat, blah, 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 while during the trip. And I was like, no, Mom, save that for the last night. We're gonna have this like trip recap, because I'm sentimental and I like to talk about that sort of stuff. I'm like, no, but we'll save it for the last night. And so for the last night, we're at this like beach hotel right on the beach. And it's finally this time to have this conversation for me, because I keep putting it off. And we're sitting at this table. I'm looking at you, and then she's sitting here to my left, and she's looking out at the ocean. And out in the ocean, there's like a boat but it's at night, so you can't really see, but it has like this blinking light, and it keeps coming in and getting closer. And I'm trying to like have this conversation with her, and she's like, she'll be like, yeah, but she'll be like, I wonder what's going on in that boat. Or she'll be like, that boat's getting closer. Like, I wonder who's on there, And so I'm like trying to breathe deep. I'm like, Kia, it's not that big of a deal. And it's interesting thinking when I was in the moment, trying to be in my head about it and be like, Kia, like, I feel pressured to have this conversation. I'm getting frustrated that she's distracted, because I feel like we don't have that much time left, because it's our last night. But that's actually my fault, because she'd wanted to have the conversation like every single night, just like have a little recap of the day, which I kept being like, no, let's save it. So I technically felt flustered because it was my fault, because I felt crunched for time, because I wouldn't actually have the conversation with her. Like, throughout the trip while it was happening, it wasn't her fault. She was just curious about what was going on in the boat. The boat eventually came up, and the guy who had been driving it like got off, and she was like, I just got to go talk to him. I got to go figure out, what he was doing. And so, she left and went to go talk to find out what the boat guy was doing. And again, I could feel it like that sort of like frustration almost of feeling crunched for time. And I guess for me, the lessons are like, sometimes I want things to be a certain way. It's a real control thing, I think, sometimes, that significant others and family members tend to push those buttons. But it was a real great way, I think, to practice these things of, again, that intention of like not needing. Mom wasn't doing anything wrong. The reason there was tension in that moment was completely self-inflicted, because I felt time pressure, because it was our last night, because of an activity I wanted to do that I waited for the last night to do. And so it's been really interesting seeing actions that other people are doing that bother me, that really have nothing to do with them. And I think that that's, for myself, like continuing on this journey, in this process, the better I can get at recognizing that and breathing and letting it go. That I think in these situations with Mom always really helped me I brush up against those things a lot more often. And if you have significant others, or obviously if you spend time with family, you know this too, but I realized that same with, whether it's with politics, these other things, like how much I struggle with letting other people believe what they believe, or do what they want to do, and not let it bother me, trying to get on my stoicism shit of just like being objective about those actions and my reaction to them, and really being more open-minded about that sort of stuff. And like also recognizing those things, I don't want to call them triggers, but things when I can feel like that tension inside of me from wanting control, and like learning how to just like breathe through it and let it go, and just let people, be themselves more, and without me needing to change them to be more like me. And so that was like, there were different lessons along the way like that were really cool. And she's my best bud. I feel blessed to have a mother who is also my best friend, and we had a blast. We ate good food, and it was I think one of our best trips, because we both like to be physically active, and some of our other trips, sometimes there are little snags and things of that nature. But anyways, we're moving on. The mom trip was fantastic. Mom's a rock star. Grateful to have her in my life. That whole Malaysia trip, we ended in Borneo, and then I ended up spending a week in Borneo solo before mom left, because I wanted to come back to Thailand, but just the way things are working out, I had kind of this week in Borneo to start revamping my life. And so I'm at that point where I think that it's good to have certain difficult moments in your life, because the way they work is a forcing function. And so right now, at this point in my life, I've been traveling mostly this last year off of my last big music project that I got in last like August or September. And so I have this stack of cash I've been traveling with that has like been slowly dwindling. And now that I'm in like the last bit of it, I'm like, okay, Kia, like we got to figure it out. Like, what is the next step? And so I was thinking it was the MFA. And because it was a funded program, I wouldn't have to, again, I was like, I can just stretch this money to the MFA and I'll be good. But I realized that as I've been thinking a lot about business and thinking about what sort of side hustle I can do, because if you're in one of these MFA programs, if you make 30 grand, but you're in a US city, that's not much. So you're going to need to have roommates, and it would just be, I'd probably need another part-time job. So I was like, what is another kind of job that I can do? Started racking my brain. I'm back in kind of business mode. Read one of the best business books I've ever read by Alex Hormozy. If you don't know who he is, check it out. It's called $1 Million Offers. And I was thinking about it, and I realized that 20 or 30 grand would be rad to write. But it was a couple of things that kind of transpired all at the same time. One was this Hormozy book on like generating real wealth. Another one was thinking about this MFA thing. And when it came to the MFA program, I realized I really love writing. But I'm tired of being broke and like doing the backpackery thing, that like I'm ready to make real money. And with the writing, like I don't want to live with roommates and like just scrape by to get this degree and then come out of it and be kind of just right where I was, because I love the idea of maybe being a professor or something. But it's not like a degree where you get it and it like guarantees a job security, or it's like you get it and then it's like you go to, it's not like a JD or going to middle school or something. It's like, okay, yeah, like I don't love that idea. First of all, just being broke again for 3 years. 2, I don't love the idea of being back in the States for 3 years. Like I've been feeling like I'm kind of over living in the States. Like I just feel like the next phase of my life will be in Europe or other places. So that's been kind of a hard circle to square. I don't love the culture, the legacy culture around writing, at least in the traditional sense of it being like you need to be picked, or like people need to choose you. It's like you need to write, and like people will choose you to get into a program, and then an agent will choose you, and an editor will choose you, and this will choose you, blah, blah, blah. I'm just not into that. Ever since I was like picked last for kickball, like I've always been like, how do I, on Seth Godin shit, I'm like, how do I pick myself? I'm like, how can I build this shit? That's always been my style, right? Kind of run and gun, independent. That's why with music, I learned how to make my own beats and mix my own records. Like I'm an independent spirit. I've got an indie spirit. That's just the way that I roll. And then I was kind of putting myself back into this kind of like a legacy sort of a culture again, where I don't love that idea of like constantly pitching in that regard. And then I'd rather just like do work that I'm into and proud of and publish it and build and find my 1,000 true fans that are into the shit that I do and like build from there. And so that was a piece that I was struggling with. I also don't think writers as a whole are like quote unquote my people. The more I was in like these Facebook groups and different things, that I don't want this to sound weird, but it was just like a little, it doesn't sound weird, but it was like a little too like woke for me, that like I'm just kind of a simple dude. You know, not everything for me is, and it's a privilege of being a white male, I get that, but not everything for me is like, you know, politics and, you know, the patriarchy. Like, it's just, I understand those things are there. I understand I'm a part of that, but it's not the only thing I want to talk about, you know? And I think a lot of times in these sort of circles when it can feel a little bit like liberal and elitist, and it's just not a community that I was like, yeah, these are my folks. I feel much more like these are my people in like nomad circles. Like when I'll go to different cities or nomad meetups and stuff, it's like this sort of combination between like one of experiencing, open-mindedness to experiencing other cultures, online business, life is short. So, make the most of it, understanding, real disparities in life and luck and fortune and privilege that, like, for me, I love these. I don't love it because sometimes you get kind of, no community is perfect, but I find in nomad communities, definitely I'm much more apt to relate to more folks in those circles. And so I found I was putting myself more into this sort of like kind of elitist white circles. I was like, this, super woke circles. I'm like, this is just not my vibe. So it was another reason that the MFA thing I was like, do I really want to do this? And so I've already invested a bunch of money into my coach. I had like people review my writing sample. I had this spreadsheet down of all the programs, what it took to apply. I just met with another coach to go over my, my statement of purpose. So I was like 3/4 of the way there. I was taking online courses, like online cohort workshops around writing. And I'm just ignoring sunk costs. I put a bunch of money into it this last year, a bunch of time. I've become a better writer, which is great. But I realized that like the big kicker is like, I'm ready to make more money on my Tim Ferriss shit. I'm ready to go to Europe and live in Europe. And like, why wait 3 years? Like if that's what I want, if I'm trying to get somebody pregnant, I'm trying to get a cute European girl pregnant, get citizenship, start a life, have a baby, have a cool, good enough job. Like that's the goal. I was like, I can live by a little city by the beach and like walk around cobblestones and like hang out with my kid and, hang with Shorty. I'm like, that's what I want. Why wait 3 years to do the art shit? Love life committed to art shit, but I'm ready to have boatloads of money. So that's kind of where my head is at. And reading this Alex Hormozy book on $1 Million Offers, can't recommend it enough. I'm gonna keep saying it. Best business book I think I've ever read. He talks about this thing called skill stacking, which I thought was really powerful. Is this idea of it's not about, right? And a lot of times we think about like having this, jack of all trades, master of none. But stacking skills, he's like, what's your leverage? Like, where are you? What are the skills that you have that you can, what are the big levers that you can pull that set you apart from other people? And so thinking about this, like, I'm not the best writer. I'm not going to be the next Tolstoy. I can write. Don't get twisted. Your boy can write, but I'm not going to write the next great American novel. I just don't have the skill set to do it. Like it would take the amount of time invested. What I'm saying is I can be competitive, not in terms of board games, but like in life. I don't know what it is, but I got this little chip on my shoulder, a little creative, competitive chip. And you don't try to be a rapper with no ego. I said that a lot of times before. That like if I want to do something, I want to be great. And so thinking about skill stacking, I'm like, okay, I love to write and I can write well, but I'm not going to be the best. I'm not going to beat you at writing. I think a lot of writers don't like to be in front of the camera and don't like to perform. They're like, I'm a writer. I want to be secluded and write and like, don't talk to me sort of a thing. So I'm like, okay, so maybe I have this sort of a performance piece or a thing, I like talking to camera, I like making content, I like speaking, that I'm like, maybe that's a layer, maybe I have the writing, but maybe I can layer speaking on top. And I heard this really interesting idea the other day. This guy was talking about Joe Rogan, how he's like, dude, he has the biggest podcast in the world. He's like the lead UFC commentator and he's one of the biggest comedians in the world. And he did that all with his voice. And I was like, whoa, that's a really interesting point. That I was thinking about, my clothes are about to fly off the balcony. Well, we're going to keep podding. The pod must go on. So thinking about that, I was like, okay, so the voice thing, it clicked for me for all of a sudden, the people a lot of times give me compliments on my voice. They're like, oh, wow, Kia, you should have a podcast. Or, wow, you have a really interesting voice. And I think it's because I have kind of a feminine voice. It's just in this higher register, which I've always felt maybe a little insecure about, but it's something that has happened enough that I'm like, dude, Kia, the world's been telling you, like, you got this voice, bro, use it. And so thinking about that in terms of skill stacking, again, with this Hormozy shit in the writing, is it's like, maybe the point isn't to go all in on writing. Maybe I got the writing, and then I got this other piece of like, I like, this performance piece. And then I've got this voice piece. And then from the career of trying to be a rapper, I've got this like audio engineering piece. And so with those sort of like 5-6 skills and other things, thinking about, online marketing, that I'm like, how could I leverage that into a thing? I'm like, that might have potential. I'm not going to be the best writer. I'm not going to be the best rapper, not the best audio engineer, not the best copywriter, not the best voice actor. But altogether, I'm a pretty good Kia, right? I do Kia pretty well. So that is the piece that I'm like, I think there might be something here. And so brainstorming that, reading this book, I've just been thinking a ton, writing every day about different ideas. Like, what could this look like? What can I do? What can I offer to people that's actually worthwhile? And so I've taken kind of a two-step approach to this, because a long-term and a short-term. The long-term vision is, I'm living on a beach in Portugal, fat booty cutie, got a kiddo, maybe a couple, eating good, sun on my chest, and work some, do the dad thing, close enough I can hang with fam, it's cool. What does that business look like? What does that monetarily, what does that look like? I think I spend a lot of my time writing. In my mornings, writing. I'm also shooting content like this. I'm also maybe creating content around this sort of like voiceover content, creating stories. I found I love stories. I love writing poetry, but I don't love poetry. I'm not great at writing poetry. I also don't necessarily love just reading poetry on the page. Some folks, yes. But I love spoken poetry. I love creating narratives that might feel a little poetic. I don't think I'm going to, like I said, I don't think I'm going to edge you out on the page in terms of poetry. But again, I think I could make some pretty cool stories in that regard. And I love learning. So I'm like, how do I mix all this up and combine this into some sort of a long-term business? What's like the personal brand, as it were? And so I think the personal brand, at least right now, and where I kind of want to go with this, is it's a personal brand around learning and around storytelling. But we'll get to that in a second. Because learning is something that I am forever fascinated by. I continue to do, whether it's psychology, relationships, things around art. It's just this hodgepodge of things that I love, that I listen to a lot of podcasts, that maybe that's the personal brand, is I write one kind of beefy newsletter a week around like top takeaways, things I'm learning. And then that can act as a script for a YouTube video. And then I'll rip that YouTube video and the audio, and I'll make that a podcast. And then maybe throughout the week or something, I'll figure out tweets from that newsletter or something that can kind of be like the social strategy. And from that, other products and ideas I've been thinking about that could go along with that in terms of how to monetize it. But I think that might be like the long-term vision, is it's like writing, it's about personal development and psychology and just ideas that I love to learn and find interesting. So that's one piece. How do you monetize something right now with the skills? And this is where I've been thinking about, this is where the Hormozy book really helped me think about offers as well, as it's not like video editing. I'm not like, I'm a voiceover actor. It's like, how do you put yourself into a category of one? This is also on some Seth Godin Purple Cow shit. But thinking about value differently. So rather than being a personal trainer, it's like, what if I give you like a workout plan and like budget meal plans and like give you text support and give you, it's like you combine all these things so that it's not just like a direct line of like video editing for $50 an hour. It's like, this is this bundle that's worth like $5,000 or whatever it is, whatever that bundle tends to be. But creating real value, and it's not in terms of what you think it is, but what the customer thinks it is, which I thought was so fascinating. He talks about this experiment, it was with wines, where they sat people down, then they had them taste an expensive wine, like a kind of a mid-tier wine and a cheap wine, and asked them to rate them by taste, which tasted better. And obviously people thought the expensive wine tasted the best, and mid-tier and the cheaper wine, they're like, it tastes relatively similar, but mid-tier's a little bit better, kind of edges it out. But the most expensive was the clear winner. And it was all the same wine. The experimenters filled the bottles and just changed the labels. And that, I think, is crazy. It's like the perception of value. And so that's what I'm really trying to figure out with what I can offer here, is like this perception of value. What can I offer that I love to do, one, and can do well, two, and three, people find valuable? And that's where this new business idea I'm really excited about. It's kind of a side hustle. I'm still piecing it together, and there's this quote I encountered last week called "You can't steer a stationary ship," which I loved. So I'm pretty much just have kind of this MVP, like minimal viable product offer, and I'm just going to iterate on it. But it's this idea that I've been really high on of, again, bring this full circle back to what I really loved about the YouTube channel when I first started this, was these little mini movies that have this poetic element, but they're done with a voiceover. It's like this mixture of copy. I'm like a copywriter / brand strategist / voiceover artist that I think I could put into a pot and have a rad offer for. The angle I'm taking right now is like e-commerce businesses, because I was thinking about who appreciates digital strategy, who's going to be running ads and needs creative, and three, who sometimes struggles to tell a story. I think e-commerce, because it's different than a personal brand, creating narratives could be especially potent, or brick and mortar as well. But like businesses that sell a product or a service, I think, rather than a personal brand. Because if it's a personal brand, at least this is my thinking right now, I could write scripts and stuff. But if it's a personal brand, they're probably going to want to, they're going to want to be the voice behind it. Whereas like I was talking to a buddy about this today, a guy who I met, we've been boxing a little bit here back at Go Gym in Chiang Mai, shout out Go Gym, is like he has an e-commerce and Amazon FBA business where he sells like pumps. And he's like, what's the story behind a pump? And it's like, that to me is exciting. It's thinking about what's the story we tell around like a ball pump. And it's like so many ideas around like dreams about wanting to play with kids or, being physical, all these things. Yesterday, so the offer is kind of a heads up, is this idea of like, again, $1 million offer, Alex Ramirez. I'm like, how do I create as little friction as possible? I'm creating 3 ads for people, front to back, the whole thing, like the best work that I can do, copywritten, just from seeing their ads, seeing their brands, trying to make just like shit that would play really well on social, period. I'm saying, here are 3 for free, see how they perform. If you want to work, I'll work with you with my package. My value right now is it's like 4 videos. So I'm packaging it as a month of content for free up front. And then I'll take like 5% off the back end. Or if it's like a sales video or something, it's like, I'll do it all for free and I'll just like take 5% of whatever the sales is over maybe 50 grand. So say you have to make over 50 grand or it's free. So like just ideas around that I think are rad to like just take out as much friction as possible and just get a lot of feedback from what these business owners are struggling with to, really iterate and create like just offer so good they'd feel stupid saying no, to quote Alex. But the point being, I was working on this ad yesterday for this tea company. It's like, okay, but they were in Ireland. It's like, okay, so how do you make tea interesting? But it was started in 1896, and it was like 4 generations of tea owner. It's like the same family. And so like the angle was like, how do you make it about family and history and tradition? It had to do about tea some, but I was like, the idea of creating stories from brands, to me, I'm like, that's some shit I could do every day and be excited about. And writing scripts and then doing voiceovers about these things. And then I have this guy who he helps me with most of my video, like help me make these shorts that I think would be great for ads. So helping people get more customers, some more leads, or help with brand, like loyalty, brand awareness, etc. I think could be really cool and also powerful and also help me make boatloads of money. So that's kind of where my head is at. That's like something I've been really excited about, is really this self-awareness around where my talents are, what my talents aren't, as well as what I want out of life and identity. Like thinking about, I think right now, because it's like in the zeitgeist, it's cool to be an entrepreneur and it's cool to be a business owner. And I like that label for myself, and I realize my ego would love to say that I'm an entrepreneur. But building out the Beat School, right, that was a little online business. I liked that. But with business, there comes a lot of aspects to it that I don't love, which is like management of people, SOPs, like I was gonna say statement of purpose. That's the MFA piece. Systems, procedures, all that types of shit. Creating systems, managing people. You're almost like the conductor of an orchestra in a way, and it's different than playing the instrument. And I realized in my life, I have some friends who are amazing conductors, and that's an art. That business of conducting, seeing the bigger picture, is an art in and of itself. But I'm having those conversations one-on-one that, like, I just don't think that's me. Like, my day feels complete. Like, I feel good if I've made something that's not like a new like system or something like that. Like, I want to make a song. I want to make like a narrative voiceover. I want to write a story. Like, I want to play the. I'm pretty much what I'm saying is, like, I want to be the artist, and that's okay. Finding an art and monetizing the art is okay. The stories, like the short stories, I'm gonna still keep working on those. I'd love to publish them, but the art, monetizing the art, that's not my music, is this idea I think around digital storytelling. That's kind of the new wave I've been on thinking about, is thinking like, how do I help people, more specifically brands or whatever, like with digital storytelling? And that's something that I think I could do well, and that I love to do, right? And so the business is going to look different. I'll be a freelancer more than an entrepreneur, and being okay with that, being okay with working with clients again, being okay, being paid for my time and not having this sort of like paid while you sleep passive income dream that I had with the, owning the beat school thing. And maybe I'll get back to that at some point. I'm not saying this is a forever thing, but right now, realizing if I don't want to have to move back home with mom and dad and be broke and try to be like a struggling writer, then there's at some point, this is what I was talking about before with like the difficulty thing. And so in these moments when I really feel like my back is against the wall, or I'm stretched thin, or think I'm uncomfortable, we'll put it like that. I still have some cash, I'm chilling, but like I'm uncomfortable in that regard, that I don't have it just like made like I felt like I did a year ago. That I think it works just as a forcing function to push me towards new chapters, right? It's when you break down to create breakthroughs. And this is a long ass pod, and I get that. I apologize for talking your ear off today, but that's what's been on my mind, is like, I'm back in Chiang Mai. It's so interesting. Every time I'm back here, I feel like I'm in growth mode. Like years ago now, in 2019, 2018, I was in the same building, and that's when I first started making beats for real and trying to sell beats and building online courses. My first courses I filmed on the rooftop of this building. And it's cool that like I'm back in Chiang Mai and like back in grind mode again. And there's just something about this city that is peaceful and beautiful, but really makes me want to hustle and makes me excited about it. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can do with this. I think even around the digital storytelling, that's kind of just like the I don't want to say brand, but that's like the kind of like overview that I'm like, dude, I got so many ideas of like products and things that could help people tell their stories, or coming up just with all these ideas, but leaning into, again, this sort of like skill stacking shit, I'm excited about. So I wasn't planning even on pitching here, but hey, if you have ideas, or if you have a brand or a product or something and you need some stories told, holler at your boy. I'll give you a discount, a serious discount as the homie right now, because that's something where I'm just looking to build the portfolio and to see what people are struggling with. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I think it could be lucrative. I think it could be a lot of fun. And it's in these moments when I really learn the most about myself, to kind of push me to my limits and see, what I want out of life, what I want to do, and what I'm made of. So thanks for tuning in, y'all, so much. As always, the very long, rambling, self-indulgent episode of Creative Contact. I appreciate y'all as always, and I'll check you in the next one. Peace.